Hey guys, it's Bub here, and today we'll be replacing my 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro's battery after it swelled up randomly. Apple would charge about $129 for this repair, however we are doing it for much cheaper. I've used this device every day for the last 4 years, and hopefully I can get another year out of it with a brand new battery installed. Without any further ado, let's get started. This video is not sponsored by iFixit, however we will be using the iFixit Fix Kit for this video. Inside of the Fix Kit we get 2 plastic cards, screwdrivers, nylon tools, tweezers, spudgers, and opening picks, which are all already included in my Protect toolkit. We get adhesive remover, which is very helpful in this process. We also get rubber gloves because the iFixit adhesive remover is a skin irritant, as I learned. We also get safety glasses, as it is also an eye irritant, and of course we get the 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro battery. This is not an OEM part, however it is an iFixit part, which is a quality part. I'm not sure if this helped, however I did use my iFixit static wristband to protect myself from shocking any internal components. To start off this repair, we are going to remove the 3 connectors that are connected to the airport card. As a note to all viewers, please do not use this video as a tutorial. I jumped around a lot during this repair and I do not recommend doing that. You are supposed to take it step by step instead of jumping around to different components. Now, we are removing the 2 screws that hold the battery board in place. The next step is we have to remove the 2 screws on each side of the I/O board flex cable as they secure this cable down in place. Then we can pry up on the 2 ends of the cable and slowly remove it from the fan. This cable is adhered in place over the fan, so you have to carefully lift it up. Now we can finally remove the single screw that holds the airport card in place and then slide it out of its socket. After carefully removing the camera cable from its connector, we can then pry up on the bundle of cables that go over the fan. We can now remove the 3 different length screws on the left fan. Once we have completed that, we can now disconnect the fan from its connector on the motherboard and carefully remove it. We can lift the latch on this side of the cable and then pry it from its socket. After removing the screws that hold in the I/O board, we can carefully remove it. We can remove this little connector at the top of the board, which is the keyboard backlight. We can then disconnect the left speaker connection. Here I am lifting up the latch on the keyboard connector and slowly disconnecting the keyboard. We can now lift up the right speaker connection. We can then again remove the 3 different size screws on the right fan and then remove it from the computer. Then we can lift up the latch on the display data cable and remove it from its socket, being very careful not to damage it. We can then remove the microphone cable from its connector on the motherboard, being very careful not to rip it as it is very thin and very narrow. We can now remove all the screws that hold in the MacBook Pro's logic board. We can now remove the 2 screws that hold the trackpad's connector down in place. We can then disconnect this connector and pull it back from the battery. We can then remove the 3 different size screws on the left speaker. We're now ready to carefully lift up the MacBook Pro's logic board and set it on a non-static surface. We can now remove the 3 different size screws on the right speaker and then remove the right speaker from the MacBook Pro's assembly. Now that we have the computer fully disassembled, we can now remove the lithium-ion battery. The iFixit adhesive remover says to do this in a well-ventilated area, so I am tearing apart my MacBook outside. Also, if I accidentally puncture the battery, I won't burn my house down. Although this doesn't give you the best camera angle, it should still give you an idea on how easy or hard it is to remove this battery. After applying adhesive remover to the first cell, we can use our plastic card to carefully slice away the adhesive under this cell. This process was surprisingly easier than I thought it would be due to the adhesive remover. Don't mind the books that are propping up the MacBook, this is all I had to prop it up so the adhesive remover would go the right way. We can now apply the adhesive remover to the second cell and let it sit for about 1 to 3 minutes. The first set of cells are officially removed. The set of cells on the other side is practically identical to this, so I'll just speed this part up. Now we can move on to the two cells that are right above the trackpad. I would like to take this time to note that I am not a professional at this and I do this for fun. If I messed up, please tell me in the comments below. However, it worked for me, so I'm doing it this way. Right as I had completed the battery removal, my battery died. I took this time to clean up the adhesive that was left from the battery on the MacBook Pro. This adhesive that was stuck on was extremely hard to remove and took a lot of scraping. However, I think I did a pretty good job of it. Now we can install the right speaker into the computer. Now it's time to install the logic board into the MacBook Pro. This took a lot of off-camera attempts as I had trouble positioning the logic board in the correct position. Now we can install each screw into its correct standoff. Each screw in this computer is a different size, so make sure you keep your screws organized when they're not in the computer. The first thing I wanted to reinstall after I installed the logic board was the SSD. After I took it out off camera, I had struggles to put it back in, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't break it and I knew how to put it back in properly. We can now put the left speaker in place and run its cable appropriately. We can now connect and reinstall the right fan. We can now carefully put the I/O board back where it should be. We can then reinstall the left fan. We can now route the cables to the cable router and then stick the cables back down onto the fan. We can now put the airport card back into its socket and then screw it down with its single screw. We can then install the I/O board connector and then put the covers over top of it. We can now connect the battery and see if the laptop powers on. At this point, I was very nervous that I put the computer back together wrong or I damaged a motherboard. However, we got a low battery sign. So, I got a power cable and connected it up. For some reason, it booted into my boot camp partition instead of my macOS partition, which that's fine. However, Windows Update couldn't have picked a better time to run. I then made my attempt to glue the battery down in place. I didn't get much of it on camera, however, I think I did a pretty good job at it. About an hour had passed since the previous clip and the current clip. It turns out that this trackpad cable caused nightmares. I didn't reconnect it because I didn't have the battery glued in. However, when I tried to use the computer without the trackpad cable, performance was limited on both macOS and Windows, the fan spun at 100%, and my keyboard didn't work. It turns out that this one trackpad cable provides power to the keyboard even though there's a dedicated keyboard connector, and for some odd reason, it also controls the fans, which is really weird. After I installed this cable over top of the battery, the computer ran fine, the fans spun up, and the keyboard worked fine. And we're done. We've successfully fixed up my 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro with a swollen battery. This iFixit cell should last me much longer than the previous OEM Apple cell. I am aware of the recalls on these MacBook Pros, however, my serial number was not in the serial number range that was affected. Anyway guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you like the type of content you see, as I do a lot of restorations on devices. Anyway guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.